23-year-old Kenyan. Ran 2:08.48 earlier this year in Dusseldorf. He's wearing the number 4 on his bib. I'm just looking, we were talking about Alex Carter. Is that Alex at the back? I mean, we know that we've got a big audience in Britain. I think it might be Alex at the back staying with them at this point, but well, let's see how we do. We're just coming up very shortly to go through the 2-kilometer point for the leading men. Still a big group there. No, it's Matteo. So his best time came last year in Valencia, as you can see on the screen, his stats. Valencia 2020, 2:08.22, so he's gone under 2:09 a few times. He's decided to commit going with the Kenyans at this stage.
It's an interesting choice, really, when we spoke about that accumulated fatigue after his attempt at Valencia last weekend. What is just going with the pace at this stage going to do? Is it going to be a brave move that's going to pay off for him a little bit later on, or is it something that he's going to really struggle with come that kind of 20-30 kilometre mark in a little bit? Of course, that European time for the qualification is 2:09.30, so do keep your eye on the clock for that one, just in case it's something that does happen for Matteo, but we'll have to wait and see. And hopefully, should that pace prove too much for him, there's a bit of a group that he can rejoin and he doesn't find himself stranded in no man's land at all.
Still a big group running very steadily at the moment.
You can see our lead women as well, encased in those club runners. That's going to be really helping them shelter from any wind if it is out there. I think there's a top 3 or 4 of the women are in that pack at the moment, and they'll be very grateful for the extra bit of pacing and support. They have got their own pacemaker. We mentioned that a little bit earlier on. And that's set at the 3:27 per kilometre pace. So still absolutely blistering when we spoke a minute ago about 3:01, which is absolutely mind-blowing. To convert that into mileage, if you're a miles athlete, that's kind of 4:51 per mile for the men. And that's something relatively similar. I think it's low 5s for the women. I'd have to get my pace conversion charts out exactly, but it's, yeah, kind of mid to low 5-minute mile pace.
There you can see the man in green. Got Pacer on there, but let's give him a name. He's Razin Abdali, who's been employed to bring these women through in around 2:26 pace at the moment. There's some of the leading women, Aurelia Jeratic up there as well. She's the fastest woman in the field, 2:26.28, Jeratic. A couple of the Ethiopians up there, Alametu Tariku and Emane Seftu Haile. As I say, they've got their first names on their bibs. Leading men just unravelling. Hopefully we'll see a 3-kilometre marker. Be useful to have a good idea of what pace they are on at the moment. Keeping an eye out for them going through the 3-kilometre point.
Yeah, looks like they're just maybe a couple of seconds off the pace there. I think they passed through that at about 9:07-ish, and we'd be, of course, looking for kind of 9:03. So a couple of seconds back maybe, but nothing that can't be made up. And of course, we did say that this is the very twisty part of the course in the opening 5 kilometres, perhaps not the fastest stage that we'll see.
And of course, from 25 kilometres, it is very gradual, but it is a downhill sweep into the finish line over those final 17 kilometres. So at this stage, even though they're not actually on even pace, nothing to worry about at the moment. Just the very tall man just behind the 2 pacers. Habtum running well at the moment. Hampton Emmanuel.
Yeah, he ran just under 63 for the half back in March, so he'll be looking for something relatively quick today. His personal best sub 212, so if he can sneak underneath that 2:11.27 mark that he set himself in Zurich earlier this year, I'm sure he'll be absolutely delighted with that.
Also up there, easily spotted figure, right towards the front there. Sarai Mezengi, the Norwegian, originally from Eritrea, got Norwegian nationality back in 2020, and it wasn't long before he was representing the country of Jakob Ingebrigtsen and Karsten Warholm and helping a huge resurgence in Norwegian athletics. Mande Busanic now hasn't been in great form recently, but he does have a 60-14 half to his name. That came, as you can see there, 5 years ago in the Barcelona half. So he's looking to try and make a point here.
Well, that lead pack at the moment just kind of ticking along like clockwork, really, and that's exactly what you want in these early stages. Of course, we've only been running less than 12 minutes, really. We'll be coming up to the 4-kilometre mark in a few seconds, but if these athletes can get in that kind of flow state, that kind of metronomic stride in these kind of opening 5, 6, 7 kilometres, that can really help them just glide through and end up just kind of ticking by until they reach halfway, at which point they can really start to push on.
Well, they're coming along the Avenida de Americas at the moment, and everybody looking very relaxed. I think there's just a very slight injection of pace there. That suddenly the leading group, having been all concertina together, has now spread out in almost single file. There's Mateo, Spaniard, looking very good indeed at the moment. So the pacemaker's doing a very nice job just keeping everything on track at the moment. We've switched into the Avenida de Oria.
It's almost mesmerising, isn't it, watching them stride for stride in identical kits as well. Absolutely fantastic.
Yes, it's almost tempting just to switch off and watch it all happen in front of you. There's Mohamed Chaboud. Now 36 years of age, Chaboud. This is his first race of the year of any description, so I can't really tell you whether he's been injured or he's just been preparing very thoroughly. Last year, though, ran his personal best in Aveiro, 2:09.20. That was 18 months ago. Hasn't really had many races since then, the Moroccan. Oh, Mateo's up there. He's really running in a very determined fashion, Mateo.
Yeah, he absolutely is. Although you could see him there just sticking his arm out slightly. I don't know if he was saying to those guys, as pace has picked up, let's keep it nice and relaxed, or if he was just saying, this is the line I'm going to take around this corner. So we'll have to see how he kind of allows this to play out. But yeah, for him to be running up, kind of, he's sat, what, second behind the pacemakers at the moment? It's a very strong run. It's a very brave run, and one where he's looking, I guess, to banish the demons from last weekend.
Indeed. Well, he's got a great track record. He's represented Spain at World Championships, Olympic Games, finished 21st in the Tokyo Olympic Games 4 years ago. Did better at the European Championships in 2022 around the streets of Munich, when he finished 14th. Also very strong cross-country runner, Mateo.
Well, we're back on the women's then, and we can see there, like we mentioned, that kind of mesmerising, relaxed sort of flow and style, and we can see here these two just looking so happy to be just next to each other, just gliding along. It's something that always strikes me when we watch these elite runners is how easy they make this look. Like, this is 5:33 minutes per mile for the women, 3:27 per kilometre, and they look like they're jogging, and that to me just speaks volumes about the quality of athlete that we've got on our screen now.
Well, it's looking as though the pace has picked up very slightly in the men's race. This, of course, Slight downhill stretch, having climbed up a little bit just before the 5 kilometre mark. So the first water station, the first aid station. So the water stations are every 5 kilometres until you get to 35 kilometres, and then the last stretch to every 2.5 kilometres.
Well, we've got a combination of water stations and fueling stations, if you like, compound stations they're known as, on the course today. The water stations, of course, just water. The compound stations can be isotonic drinks, fruit, various different things that athletes might need to fuel them throughout the marathon. And at these compound stations, and some of the water stations as well, the elites have their personal drinks on the right-hand side. So you'll see them dipping off to the right to pick up their own water bottle, and that's full of various different fueling strategies, whether it's electrolytes, carbohydrates, various things like that to help keep them performing at the top level throughout this marathon.
I'm curious, you mentioned fruit. I can't imagine any of the elite runners picking up fruit.
No, I would be surprised, if I'm honest. They'll be much more inclined to go for the gels, the carbohydrate drinks, things that they've pre-prepared. But the masses, I think the fruit will be a welcome little injection of glucose.
Yeah, you're running 4 hours, you certainly need a banana to get you through to the finish line. So there's some of the Kenyan runners and Ethiopian runners, still all the main contenders up there.
Yeah, certainly are. Amani Sofu Hele in there as well, the 2:31.14 athlete. I reckon she'll be looking to drop below that 2:30 mark. At 2:30.14 at Buenos Aires earlier on this year, so she can just shave off half a second to a second a mile there. She can be looking at a nice shiny new personal best.
I'll tell you what, Masenge of Norway has been very committed here. Yes, he's been tucked behind the pacemakers, but he's been right to the fore of the leading group all the way through. I think we've started already to lose one or two of the leading men who are just finding this pace just a little bit too tough, even though we're only 5.5 kilometres into this race.
Yeah, that's a very early stage, isn't it, for people to be dropping off the pace or making decisions about whether or not today is going to be the day for them. There's a lot of running left to be done, but these men needing to try and stick with a pack, whether or not they decide to drop the pace or not, they need to try and keep some company during this race, because running alone or a solo run at this point is a very, very difficult task.
Yes, as we switch back to the front of that leading pack, we're looking at NEU Nagate just a moment ago. The camera was focusing on him, and he's got quite a few half-decent marathons to his name. Last year ran a 2:11, and earlier this year was in the big Paris race, one of the top races in Europe. Came home 14th in 2:13, and again, I think he's another of these athletes who's coming here with something to prove. Personal best of 2:11.20, and I'm sure he would very much love to get under that 2:10 barrier, which starts to get you invites into some of the top races. Of course, as we were saying earlier, Malaga, it's not a world marathon major, we know that, but it is an upcoming race, and it's also a pretty quick course, and this is a race that a lot of athletes come to try and make their name.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost a perfect middle ground, really, isn't it? It's a quick enough course that you can run a personal best, put down an impressive performance. It's respected, that people will know that if you go to Malaga, you've got a good level of credentials, but it's also not overly crowded. You've got the space to make it work. You can be a bit more relaxed. You've not perhaps got that pressure mounting on you. So it's a really nice middle ground for these athletes to go and see where they're at, put a marker down and use it as a stepping stone to build into the next year.
I was talking to a few of the British club runners, and they took exactly the same approach to that. They like coming here. It's an easy trip from Britain, and of course many places in Scandinavia as well. Malaga Airport, one of the busiest airports in Europe. I mean, there's 12 million passengers. I looked it up yesterday coming through the airport. It's easy to get to. It's cheap flights, and it really is selling itself as a destination, not just for elite runners, but also grassroots runners, club runners. Maybe if you're a man looking at running at 2:30, 2:35, a woman running around 3 hours, you know, perhaps getting you into the British or Scandinavian countries' national championships, where you might get your travel expenses paid.
Exactly. It's It's exactly what you want, really, and it just ticks so many boxes for these athletes. Whether you're elite or club runner, it's an ideal setting, really.
Now, I know the pacers are looking at their watch, but I'm wondering whether they're obviously giving the runners a little bit of space. I would have thought that they should be just a fraction closer there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the athletes either work to bridge the gap between themselves and the pacers, or if the pacers just begin to ease up slightly there, because, of course, part of the job as a pacemaker is, of course, to set the pace, as the clue is in the name, but also to act as a little bit of a wind block. These athletes can be using them for several reasons here, and they'll be wanting to make sure that they are sheltering if it is windy down that coastline.
Well, Leonard Kipkoech Langa, now 33 years of age. Best time came. He's the sub-207 man in the Vienna Marathon back in 2022. Looks as though he's struggling a little bit here. Perhaps a little bit short of fitness. Now he's going to have to just dig in. Desperately needs a good time to restore his reputation. He's coming off the back of the pack. Now we've got a clear sight of it. The pack is starting to move away from the fastest man in the field, Leonard Langa.
Well, Muscani, Alema Yahu Waluchi, the leading woman at the moment. And you can see women interspersed in that pack there, just tucked in neatly behind their pacemaker. And they seem to be staying much more condensed in these early stages than the men that are starting to look like they're splintering off ever so slightly.
Well, hopefully we'll see a leaderboard at some point. But I think that women's pack, interspersed with all those men, both pacers and very good standard club runners, I think there's only about 5 or 6 women up there. I think the pacers being quite quick over these first 7 kilometres.
Well, it's interesting. We said earlier on about how much it can benefit the women having these good club runners come up alongside them and help group that pace pack together. But also, these club runners, they have the freedom to go a little bit faster if they feel good. They've not got to worry too much about the times and things that they're going for, in the sense of if they get a bit overexcited, these elite women could get dragged along with them here, and they've got to be careful that that's not to the elite women's detriment as well. And they've got to keep their mind really sharp on the paces that they're going, and hopefully use the club runners to their benefit, not the opposite.
I'll tell you what, though, I have to give a shout out to some of the club runners. I mean, we just saw there one chap urging on the crowd. And just remember, he is running at 2:26. That is a pretty respectable time.
Absolutely is. It's more than respectable, I'd say.
So a big shout out to all the club runners from across Europe, around the world, and then those closer to home from Malaga, Andalusia and the rest of Spain. Well, now the leading group in the men has closed up behind the pacers, and it's still the Norwegian Mezengi looking very comfortable. Mentioned a little bit earlier that he got a silver medal on the track in Munich over 10,000 meters. That was a big surprise. We'd seen a few results of him at the time, and of course he had gone through some quite difficult circumstances as a refugee from Eritrea originally, but now with Norwegian nationality. He's opted to come here rather than running the European Cross-Country Championships, which is not that far away, over the border in Lagoa in Portugal. That kicks off a bit later on.
Yeah, it absolutely does. That's going to be an exciting event as well, isn't it? Watching the European Championships, the European Cross Country is always one of my favourites to watch. Every year it's one of the best in the calendar, I think. But just past the 8 kilometre mark now, and these men still ticking along really nicely. They have got to be careful of speed bumps. You can see them on the ground there. They are something that these elite men don't want to get tripped up by, quite literally, because that would certainly disrupt the flow of things.
So they went through 8 kilometres unofficially in 24:08, I should say. So the race unfolding very nicely. So the leading men just heading towards the big Malaga cruise terminal I'm sure some of you will have visited that in your time. It's very, very famous. It's, of course, Malaga, one of the busiest ports on the Mediterranean, both for pleasure cruises and also commercial traffic. So it's Ethiopian women still doing well at the moment.
Well, there's a bit of communication going on between the leading women there, just saying, ease up a little bit, keep your space, keep your distance. Nothing too extravagant in these opening 10 kilometres or so. Very aware of overexerting themselves. And I think that's a very wise choice, especially, like I mentioned, when you are encapsulated in the masses of these club runners who are all moving very, very strongly. And they will only be gaining momentum as well.
I'll tell you what, Abdullahi, the main pacer for the women in the green vest, just a little bit out of shot, he's doing a great job. I was very impressed there. I like the fact that he was looking around, making sure where the rest of the women were, making sure everybody was okay. Well, we get a true sense of the pace when we get up to about 10 kilometres.
Yeah, the women are looking for around 34:30 through 10 kilometres, so not too far to go now for that one, for that checkpoint.
And the men are not very far away from the 9-kilometre point at this stage. So we've got a couple of the Kenyan athletes in there at the moment as well. So there's very much a battle between Kenya and Ethiopia at the sharp end of the women's race at the moment.
Well, these elite men looking more strung out yet again. Now we've rejoined them at the front and you can see them, they've just picked up what looks like to be their personal bottles, their personal drinks with gels and various different things. Matteo over on the left-hand side of your picture, you can see him taking on a gel. And a lot of athletes or a lot of runners often have to learn their fueling. They've got to find the right way to manage it for themselves. It's a very individualized thing, but you'll see these elites taking on fuel in the very, very early stages of a marathon, and that's so that their stores, their carbohydrate stores, don't get too depleted and that they're able to perform at the right level, have the right energy throughout the marathon, as opposed to refueling when stores get too low.
You can see the big cruise terminal that just dipped in and out of shot for the leading men. The chasing group's just going to pass it. And now they're moving south, and they'll very quickly get back onto the seafront again, and then they'll turn a sharp left, and then they've got a very, very long run, very straight run as well, all the way out into the Malaga eastern suburbs of Pero de Galejo and El Palo. Takes them out for about another 5.5 kilometres before they turn round again and then come through the housing areas of those two suburbs. But it's still the Norwegian Ezegni looking very confident and comfortable at the front.
Well, we're looking for around 30:10 through 10k for these leading men at the moment, so keep an eye on the clock. We'll be approaching that in about 65 seconds, so we'll have to keep half an eye on the clock and half an eye on the 10-kilometre marker to get an idea of exactly where we're sat in relation to that course record at the moment.
Just a little bit further back and has looked very, very comfortable. He's ran a very good race so far. Is Benson Benzoki Mutiso, Kenyan I described, who's sub 209 man, who, just chatting to him, he's looking for a big time. He said he was coming here looking for a 205. Well, I'd have to say that might be a little bit ambitious, but he's looking good at this stage.
Yeah, well, you never know, do you? It could unravel in a whole load of different ways at the moment, but hey, if you want it to go that well by the end, it's got to start as well as it is at the moment for him. So, but we rejoin the women, who are still looking relatively unchanged since we last saw them.
Yes, they've hidden slightly, but to the fore. There we see it, just behind the pacemaker, is Miskan Alemayehu. Well, she's got one marathon to her name, a 2:39, which was earlier this year in China at the Chengchun race. She's running very well at the moment. She's got good credentials over the half. 69.36 earlier this year. Well, earlier this year, only 2 months ago in Cardiff, in Wales. I make it 6 women interspersed with that group of runners, group of men's runners. So 30.05. That's a very, very sharp time indeed. That's absolutely on 2:06.5 pace.
Yeah, that is exactly what they were hoping for, isn't it? And perhaps that injection of pace that we saw a little bit earlier on is exactly what was needed. Pacemakers evidently doing a fantastic job at the front of this race. 10 seconds in hand over the men's course record so far.
So there's a little bit of an incline here. Perhaps the 10th kilometre might be a bit slower, but then it becomes very fat. Nothing really to worry about in terms of going up and down. A big group there, Busendich as well. Whole group of people. So the leading group, including the 2 pacemakers. So the leading group's 11 strong, I'm counting. And then a little bit of a gap back to a few of the other men who are struggling to stay with the leading group. So Busendich up on the shoulder of his slightly taller Norwegian counterpart. Busendich having a good race at the moment. I wasn't expecting to necessarily see him perform quite so well, but of course we're only 10 kilometres into the race. Let's provide that as a caveat. We didn't mention him, but also up there Mohammed Arden. And I know, Rosie, you're reasonably familiar with Mohammed, coming from a British background.
Yeah, most definitely. He's a Thames Valley athlete, based in London, of course. He's 11th in the UK this year, actually. And if we're on the kind of the British scene at the moment, it's been a fantastic year for British marathon running, especially on the men's side. If I take a quick glance down the men's all-time list for the UK marathon runners, 5 of those top 10 times were run earlier this year, and it just goes to show that we're in such a strong place, and all of those top 10 are under 2:09. So Mohammed Ardan, he's got his work cut out, but he's absolutely in a strong position to start breaking into that UK top 10 and making some real strides forward now.
And at the very least, perhaps go sub 2:10 in this race. We're just looking there, just a bit further back at the field. One of the men who is struggling, Maxwell Rotich. Now, Rotich has a unique credential in this elite field. As having been a world champion, he was part of the Ugandan team that took the team title at the World Cross Country Championships back in 2019. Very strong runner over the shorter distances, Rotich. He's looking for a quicker...
Also part of the Ugandan 1-2 in the Bilbao half relatively recently. So, yeah, he's doing pretty well, really, isn't he? He's got quite a CV there.
Yeah, he's struggling a little bit here. He's a 2:15 marathon runner. just wonder whether the marathon is really his right distance. So his credentials really are at the half. So.
Well, Imane Seifu-Hele looking very smooth there. About 20 seconds down on the women's course record, but that was to be expected today. We knew that they weren't necessarily going for the best mark here in Malaga.
And she's looking very, very comfortable at the moment. Just right behind her, Doreen McComan, now 27 years of age. McComan, second fastest woman in this field. Personal best in the marathon, 2:27.01 from Firenze, Florence, if you're an English speaker, last year. There you can see the 34.41 for the leading group. So just 4 women in there. I thought there was a few more. Maybe I was obscured by that big group of men all around them. So it's Seifu-Hele, McComan, Tariko Alamayeho, and then Dina Alexandrova, who we saw on the start line, well, about 35 minutes ago, and she's drifting off the back. So 3 Ethiopians and 1 Kenyan in that leading group at the moment.
Well, it's worth mentioning, actually, that one of the Ethiopians, Haile, we mentioned her literally just a second ago, she actually broke the women's only 50-kilometre world record in 2023. So safe to say that she's going to get stronger as this goes on, I think, because 50 kilometres is, of course, an ultra distance it's classed as now. So that's definitely something worth bearing in mind.
Slight surprise, though, not to see Aurelia Jeratic, sometimes races under the name Aurelia Kiptu, up there. She was the fastest woman in this field, so just wondering what's happened to her. And also Lucy Chilele, 2 very good Kenyans. We've been looking at the leading group, but some of the leading women, some of the stronger women in the elite field, starting to drift a little bit out of contention at the moment. So back with the men's race. And if my eyes have deceived me, suddenly 1 or 2 men have fallen off the back of that group. We saw Rotic struggling, going backwards. Well, they went through in 30.05, which is a really good pace. And I think at this stage, of course, we do have 32 kilometres to go. The course record is definitely on.
Most definitely, but it's interesting, actually, watching them run in that kind of grouped formation there. They're actually quite a way off that red line. And the red line will have been put down by the race organisers to mark the fastest race line, the most efficient race line on the course. And the pacemakers in that lead group willingly ignoring it by the looks of things.
Yeah, well, they've got a run of about 5.5 kilometres from when they took the left turn into this seafront. You can just see that just beyond the pine trees. There's one of the race organisers just telling the pacemakers just to control the pace, giving them advice. But over to the left-hand side of your screen, there's the sea. There you can see it better with the leading women who've just turned into the seafront area. And now they've got a long, long run. And as we were saying before, thankfully, and I'm just looking out through our commentary position, no, the wind has definitely dropped.
Yeah, most definitely. It's very, very still from what I can see from here. Of course, there will be a slight breeze along the coast, there always is, but yeah, it's a much, much better day marathon running wise, I think, than these athletes would have been thinking it could be yesterday and last night especially. I remember going to bed in the hotel last night thinking, my goodness, I'm glad it's not me racing out there tomorrow.
I was sending a few videos on my phone yesterday afternoon of the choppy seas and the waves breaking, and I was thinking, well, it was great for surfing, not so sure about marathon running. Nevertheless, the seas are a lot calmer today. So we've got 3 Ethiopians up in that main pack, 1 Kenyan. Perhaps not the Kenyan we were expecting, but Doreen McComan doing very well at the moment. There's a long marathon career, McComan. Started out in 2018 when she was just 20 years of age and has rattled up quite a lot of victories at some of Europe's second-tier events. There's several victories in Turin, Won last year in a personal best in Firenze, Florence, in 2:27.01. So the men just getting a little bit of shelter now. They've moved away from the seafront, now into the housing area. So about 13.5 kilometers into this race now. So they're just coming out of the suburb of Pedregalejo. Traditionally, this used to be a fishing village. Now, of course, very popular with summer holiday makers.
Well, that next checkpoint is going to be the 15-kilometre mark. That's going to be 45.15 is the targeted pace there. I'm just brinking over that 40-minute mark at the moment.
Still early in the morning. It's not many people around in the streets. I know the Spanish, you know, do like to get up late at the weekends.
I can't say I blame them. It's been a few very early starts for us this weekend. Imane Seifuhale looking very focused there. Tucked in neatly behind the pacemaker.
Yeah, she doesn't have many credentials to her name. Ran a marathon in September. Ran a personal best of 2:30.14 in Buenos Aires. She's certainly raced around the world. I'm just looking at her stats and her biography. She also ran earlier this year in South Africa. So she's on course for a big personal best at the moment, probably shaving about, what would you say, about 2 minutes, even pace?
Yeah, I would say so. 2.5 perhaps, if she can keep going the way she is at the moment. There's not much strain on her face. She looks very relaxed. There's no real concern or anything like that going on in the way that she's moving. Sometimes when athletes are perhaps pushing it a little bit beyond their boundaries, you can start to see them tighten up in the shoulders, the head might give it a bit of a wobble, perhaps a grimace across their face. But actually, she's looking very relaxed, very happy, very smooth. And of course, we are still in very early stages of this marathon, but it's better to still be looking smooth at 10K than it is to not, isn't it, really? So
Absolutely. And just a little stumble there. I just wonder whether one of the male runners just went up the back of her. She hasn't lost a shoe or anything. It was only a slight stumble. So back with the men. And is Mezengue up there on the shoulders of the pacemakers. Two very good pacemakers. Kim Tai, who's got number 21, is a sub-60 half marathon runner. So can certainly bring these men through the projected 63.45 without any problems whatsoever. Looking very relaxed indeed. Kim Tai, the man on your right-hand side of your screen. But still a reasonably large pack behind them, all covering the moves. But they're almost looking as though they're pacing just for Mezengue himself.
It'll be interesting to see if that is the case, and as we do keep going and progressing through this marathon, if it does dwindle kind of this early on as well, and if that is the case, are these pacemakers going to try and push further than 30K, or are they going to leave them to solo run the last 12 kilometres? But these women in a very crowded pack with the top club runners. It's going to be interesting to see how that impacts them when they get to these aid stations. Go to pick up the personal drinks. Of course, the elite athletes, you'll see them deviate off to the right-hand side. The club runners don't have that privilege. And the athletes have to be very careful that there aren't more kind of trips and spills going on than absolutely necessary.
Well, Mezengue's got an interesting backstory. As we were mentioning, he was an Eritrean refugee domiciled in Norway, and he's now 39 years of age. but he only started running in his mid-20s. Was certainly not a runner at all in his junior years, even though he was based in Eritrea at that time, which was obviously has a fantastic running tradition as well, but just picked up and got involved in running after his move to Norway. So unlike many runners, he hasn't got a lot of years in his leg. He's got about a decade of running in his legs, and that may make a difference. That certainly will have increased his longevity as a top-class athlete.
Yeah, most definitely, and especially over the marathon distance as well. I think that's going to have played out really, really well for him. But we have just passed that 15-kilometre mark, sorry. And we're about 5 seconds inside the pace at the moment, which is absolutely fantastic. There are 45.10 the leading men went through at, and 45.15 is the target.
So at the moment we're looking at bang on 2:07 pace. And the women, well, it's still highly pushing the pace at the front. Two Ethiopian colleagues and Doreen Merkomen in there as well. And a little bit easier to see now that there are 4 women in that pack. Some of the club runners have gone to the fore, some of them have drifted back, and as you might expect, 15 kilometres into a marathon, things have started to thin out a little bit.
As we talk about thinning out, that lead pack is really starting to become almost like a train, really, isn't it? It's properly strung out back over about 25 metres or so there, by the look of it.
Confirmed time through 15 kilometres at 45:05.
And that gap you can see in the green in the top right of your screen, sorry. That's -18, that was -10 earlier, so they have significantly improved that pace.
Well, we still have quite a long way to go in this race. We've got 22 kilometres, so perhaps let's not get too carried away just yet. But nevertheless, 18 seconds inside the course record pace. We could be looking at potentially, if they can continue this even pace, the first ever sub 2:07 race in Malaga. Course record, just to remind you, 2:07.39 by Mark Correa, which dates from 2021. And Mazengi's personal best, 2:07.10. Did that in Valencia back in 2022. Last year ran a 2:07.25, so he's pretty consistent when he finishes races in the 2:07 bracket. It'd be absolutely wonderful and quite unusual for a 39-year-old to set a personal best at elite level in the marathon.
It absolutely is, and everybody loves a bit of an unusual story, don't they? A bit of an unusual journey. So I'm sure that'll make him ever more popular. But these athletes starting to kind of regroup a little bit after they were strung out so much past the 15-kilometre mark. They've just come back together somewhat. The pace is still pushing on off the front, but those chasing in the second half of that lead pack have just started to pull themselves back together.
So it is a group of only 4 men up there, but that can't be right because we can see a few more. I make it a lead group of 7. I'm just wondering where we've lost a few men, but nevertheless, it is certainly a lead group of 7 men behind the 2 pacemakers. And this is Busendic now. Well, I have to say, this is a remarkable run from Busendic at this stage. I certainly didn't have him down on my bingo card, shall we say, for running this sort of race, but he's doing very well at the moment.
I wonder how much of this has been a long-term plan for his race, and whether this was what was discussed with his coach, or whether or not he thought, oh, I feel good, I'm going to go for it, and just see how it pans out. And if you don't know if you don't try. So I wonder how much of this is predetermined tactics from Vucinic and how much was...
Well, he ran a very low-key race back in August, a 2:28 race in Africa. He's predominantly a half-marathon specialist, but he's coming through, now 28 years of age, Vucinic, who's tucked in there between his two Kenyan compatriots who are making the pace. But he has good credentials as well. He's been part of Kenyan cross-country teams that have done well in the past. He's gone to African championships and world championships at cross-country. There's Matteo, still hanging on the back of that lead group, doing a good job at the moment. And he's on personal best pace, but he is starting to look as though he's just tiring a little bit. I just get the sense, you know, just looking at that back view of him with his shoulders, he's just a bit tense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He looked to me like he was almost pushing a little too hard in the very early stages, perhaps not overworking, but just looked perhaps like he was overreaching just a tiny bit. And I think that's starting to add up as we watch his style and form develop. And now that gap has reopened and it's become quite significant now, as Vucinic is the only one attached to the pacemaker.
Yeah, well, they've just gone through 17 kilometres, unofficially in 51:15. So still excellent pace. So they're still ticking off kilometres. Those were a couple of slightly slower kilometres, unofficially, I hasten to add, at 3:05 kilometres, but still extremely good running at the moment, still really on course for 2:07 marathon. Yes, Matteo, now it's the long, hard run home, I think. It's going to be quite difficult to come back from this. It's just before the halfway point, and he's starting to drift backwards and backwards. I fear trying to come back, as we were talking about. It was a bit of a surprise to see him on the start line, but he was going for broke and gambling that he still had the fitness in his legs. But I suspect the tiredness from those kilometres, 20-odd kilometres in Valencia, was also in his legs.
Yeah, most definitely, and try as you might to recover, there's only so much that can humanly be done following a marathon or following a marathon attempt. So it's going to be a tough run for home, and this is where he's got to consider, does he allow himself to drift back to the next group, pick up some competitors, some people to run with, or does he try and keep going and try and cling on and do what he can here? And I've got to be honest, I think his best move now would be to pick up the group behind him.
Yes, group behind him, including Britain's Mohamed Arden, about 30 seconds in arrears at the moment. Still running very steadily, the women's group.
There you can see the women have deviated off to the right-hand side, left of your screen, of course, to pick up those personal bottles that we were talking about a little bit earlier on. And like I mentioned, they will be full of various different mixes of different drinks. They could be electrolytes for hydration to prevent cramping. It's important that these athletes do take on the salts that they need. They'll be sweating a lot during events like this, especially in relatively warm conditions that we've got here today. Or it could be carbohydrate drinks in which they are using to keep the fuel levels high and make sure that they are not depleting those stores, and muscles can contract properly, they can generate enough energy and make sure that they're being efficient.
Yes, we're looking there at the 15-kilometre time for the women, 51:59. So in sharp contrast to the men's race, they're not chasing any particularly quick times. 51:30 was the pace for the women's course record.
Yeah, women's course record 51:30, like you said. 51:45 was the forecast 15k split for the initial pace. So they are a little bit off what they asked for initially. That was 3:27 per kilometre, remember, and 73 minutes through the half. So we'll keep an eye on it. Of course, we know that we do get that downhill slope from about 25k. So even if they are a touch off the pace by halfway, it's still recoverable.
Yes,
and these athletes could still get what they want out of it.
And they're aiming at the moment 2:27 pace as we can see there. So you've got Hailu, Tariku, Makomen, and Lemayehu, the 4 women in that leading group. Ethiopians, of course, and also the Kenyans often have 2 family names, but quite often they just have 1 name on the results sheet. So we're not always giving them their full names, just the ones that they're best known as. Can be sometimes quite confusing for commentators. We've seen plenty of Ethiopian and Kenyans, same person, but appearing with 2 different names on results over the course of a season. Try and unravel it.
Bit of a jigsaw puzzle to piece together at points, but yeah, these athletes, got to say, the women are looking very strong, and whilst slightly off the pace that they initially requested, looking very consistent and very metronomic.
So it's looking as though the leading runners are now starting to get back behind the pacers. Still Busandich. Also up there, Enyu Nagat, Ethiopian, the 2:11 man. Slightly ungainly running style from Ngat. Busandich, well, we've seen that from quite a lot of Kenyans. They have this very tight, they don't have an awful lot of arm action. It's almost like a boxer punching his way, doing his road work. But for Busandich at the moment, it's proving to be very effective.
Well, we can see Matteo is really off the pace now, and he looks like he's starting to struggle, if I'm honest. We're approaching halfway in the relatively near future, and it's going to be a long run for home for him now.
Oh, I think you can be honest. I think that is the truth. He is starting to struggle. Nevertheless, still running well at the moment. If he can actually just grit his teeth. I mean, many runners go through bad patches during the course of the marathon. It's not always plain sailing. Some recover. And he's still on course for a pretty good time. Oh, I think I'll tell you what the race is worth. I looked it up. Actually, we were wondering. So first prize is €3,000, and then the prize money goes down to the top 10. And if you do break the course record, you get another €1,000. Now that may not seem like a lot of money in comparison to the likes of the Valencia race, or let's just say London or Berlin. But as I say, this is almost a way of putting yourself in the market. You come away from here, you get a victory. And for many of these runners, it might well be the biggest ever payday that they've had. They'll be able to come back, do 2 or 3 more races during the course of the next calendar year. And it's a very worthwhile investment for them.
Yeah, I think that's, you say it might not be the biggest payday that they ever receive, but like you say, up until this point in their career, it could well be, and it's still a significant payout, really. €3,000 can go a long way, and for a lot of these athletes that are on various deals, various contracts, it's going to be very useful money.
€3,000 is also an annual salary in Kenya, and so it goes a long way. Well, we're now a bit further down in the race. We're actually getting very close to 20 kilometres. At that point, back in 15, Angulo was part of, Mateo Angulo, given his full Spanish name, was very much part of the leading group. Not so much so now. So it's Busandich and Negete up in front. I'm just looking to see what happened to, oh yes, Mazenge now. Drifting back, he's about 7th after showing at the front. I thought very briefly we'd lost him and he might have withdrawn, but no, I mean, he's probably one of the tallest of the leading group, but he was actually hidden by that phalanx of men in predominantly white vests. So Mazenge, who is doing so well, he's drifted back a little bit.
Well, like you say, Phil, they could be just going through a rough patch in this marathon, and if you look back, we spoke about the British scene a little bit earlier on. Phil Sussman ran in Valencia last weekend, and he actually spoke about afterwards the different patches and phases that he goes through in a marathon, and how some kilometres feel absolutely horrendous. Like there's almost nothing worse. And then some kilometres you can switch. You've come through it, you've hit the wall, you've broken through, and then you're gliding on again for the next 4 or 5k until the next phase. And it's one of the many challenges with the marathon is you can feel absolutely superb for one section and diabolical for another, and it can be very fluid, very dynamic, and you never quite know what's around the corner in the next section.
I'm getting the impression that the women are just content just to battle this out. They're not going for fast times, regardless of the fact that the pacer was urging them on. And they're just waiting to see how this race unfolds, and it's turned into a head-to-head battle, which is great to see. Love great racing, but I have a feeling that fast times are no longer going to be part of the equation as far as the women's race is concerned. But nevertheless, once we get to 30 kilometres, oh, some gestures there from McConan. Don't think she's happy.
Yeah, we saw a second ago then in that water station that the elite women couldn't necessarily get through to the water because the club runners were in the way. And of course the club runners have every right to be there and collect the water as much as the elite women do, and you could see perhaps some frustration there from the women, but also some of the club runners did hand over the water pretty quickly, which is all you can ask for, really. And I think that's a great showing of sportsmanship, really, especially at a point where you've got the two worlds of elite and sub-elite coming together.
So Amane Sifuhaile up at the front, as she's been for so much of this race, as we were just saying, just to reiterate. She's had 2 marathons this year, 2:31 in Durban. She won that. 2:30 finishing 5th in Buenos Aires, a bit quicker. She's come from an ultra running background, a 50-kilometre runner in her early part of her career. She's looking very confident. Yehu with those sleeves. Well, as we were coming here, we were sitting in the hotel lounge waiting to catch the shuttle bus. Alema Yehu looking very relaxed indeed before the race, not at all nervous. Well, now things are starting to happen in the men's race. Busendich, I think, is urging them on, pushing them on.
Yeah, he absolutely is, and that gap has opened up even more. We can see that the pace at the front of this men's marathon really has picked up, actually, since our last glance at the lead pack. So, Enyu Nigats Tamen joining Busendich at the front. Those two looking like they've really put a surge in, and that gap, you can see that the rest of the lead pack fading into being chasers now. And before we know it, if they're not careful, these two are going to be away and clear by the time the pacers vacate the course.
And 2 fairly inexperienced marathon runners as well. Busendich has only got 1 very modest race under his belt. Negat. Well, it's Kim Tai just out of shot. That's Busendich and Negat. Negat has got 2 previous marathons to his name, a 2:13 and a 2:11. But what I like about Ngat, just looking at his stats, I have to say I'm not terribly familiar with him, is that he had last year a very good half, 60:44. So he's obviously put the work in terms of extending his range.
Well, there you have the halfway marker. 1 hour 3, so 63 minutes, 18 seconds. And still comfortably underneath that men's course record. And that gap in highlighted in green is growing at every checkpoint, isn't it? And we can see as well that that's another personal aid station that we have just passed. Athletes collecting more of their refueling supplies. But to be moving through at this pace so far, halfway. These athletes looking very strong, and Vucinic seems to have come out of that aid station, that water station, a little bit stronger than his competitor, and it's now just him and the pacers.
Yes, we've got 3 Kenyans just behind the leading pair. Chemotot, Kiptu and Krop. But they do seem to be drifting ever further back. Well, that halfway time, 63.18. You don't need to be a great mathematician to work out that that's inside 2:07 pace. So as I say, I'm starting to get just ever so slightly excited that we could actually see the first sub 2:07 race here in Malaga.
It's definitely on the cards as we wait with bated breath now.
So Vucinic and Negat. There's the man who was pushing the pace at the front in the early parts of the race. Mezenge, he's starting to drift back. So too is Motiso, the Kenyan, who we also saw in the early stage of the race. And just to reiterate Rosie's comments from talking about Daniel Mateo, they've just got to grit their teeth now. It's going to be a tough second half of the race for both of these men. And I have to say, Mezenge, having looked so fresh for the first 15 kilometres, now starts to look rather tired.
Yeah, you've got to hope that it's one of those temporary phases that we spoke about a little bit earlier, and it comes back round to him, and perhaps the electrolyte or carbohydrate drinks that he can be taking on at those aid stations will help refresh him somewhat. But if the damage has already been done, then it could well be a very tricky run for home.
But Ciso alongside him, though, doesn't look quite in such distress. I think distress is probably overemphasising it, but doesn't look to be struggling quite so much. Maybe he can pull back the men in front of him.
It's definitely a possibility, and if he can, he's probably going to have to start working on that relatively soon to prevent the damage being done. But could Mezenge then kind of cling on and use the efforts to bridge the gap? If it comes back around to him, maybe. If not, and he's cut adrift, it's going to be a very long run for home.
Well, I hope I'm proved wrong with what I'm about to say, but I think Mezenge's race has been run, unfortunately. But I will look forward to him proving me wrong. So Vucinic and Negete, the 2 men following the pacemakers, and the pacemakers have been given orders to take it through to 30 kilometres, and they're doing a very, very good job, the men's pacemakers. Just behind them, Chemtot, Krop and Kiptu, 3 Kenyans. One of the Kenyans, I'm not quite sure which one it is, he's closing on that leading pair though. If you look to the left-hand side of your screen, look back to the motorcycles, there's one of those 3 Kenyans I just mentioned in front and trying to get up there with them, with the leading pair. I think it might be Chemtot, I'm not quite sure.
Well, this lead pack of the women, it looks like it's starting to dwindle slightly. The volume of it perhaps dropping off as they lose a few more club runners. But there we've still got at least 3 there. All 4 of the women in that lead pack are still there though, as they shelter over on the right-hand side of the course, allowing the club runners to take the left-hand side.
Yeah, looking there at Alamitu Tariku. Tariku, marathon best. Well, she also ran in Buenos Aires, took 3rd place there back in September at 2:29.07, her personal best. That was her marathon debut. This is her 2nd race, and she's up there at the moment, looking to perhaps shave a minute or so off her best. This is Alemayehu, who I mentioned, was looking very, very calm and collected before the race, chatting away to her Ethiopian compatriots.
Well, you can see that age just 21, and that's really quite impressive, actually. She's got a very long career ahead of her in the marathon if she can get this right and not burn herself out, of course. There's plenty of time to learn from the marathon. There's a lot of different things going on that you can pick up, and the experience has a lot to say. So to be just 21 and competing at this level already is absolutely fantastic over this distance. But these women will be approaching the 20-kilometre mark any moment now. And of course, the halfway point looming just ahead. And we'll get an idea of exactly what pace we're on. They were aiming for 73 through half. It's going to be just out of touch of that by the time they get there. It's going to be more like 74, I reckon, 74 low.
Well, the halfway point, they come past the famous Malaga bull ring, dip into the city centre once again before going out to the west of the city, out towards the airport. So there's McConan, quickest of the women in this group of four that are battling for supremacy at the moment at the front of the women's race. Omane doing a great job. Saifu Haile, give her a full name.
Well, still, we've got one of the Kenyan athletes trying to bridge that gap back to the leaders.
Yes, it is Chemtot who's trying to get up there, but I think Krop is the man just behind him with the orange sleeves. So Chemtot making his marathon debut here. So he's having a good run for his first outing over 26.2 miles. Some of the others a bit further behind.
Well, we're going to start getting to the point soon where if these athletes have unfortunately missed their personal bottles a little bit earlier on, of course it can be quite difficult running through at that pace to collect a bottle, drink it, take on the fuel. If they have unfortunately missed one or two of them, they are going to start to pay for it relatively soon. So these athletes really need to do all they can to be efficient, conserve their energy and take on as much as they can at each aid station.
Here's a question, Rosie. If you were to miss your bottle, what's the psychological effect? I mean, obviously, all humans are different. Some would be calm, some would get very nervous and stressed out about it. What do you...
Yeah, I think
from an elite point of view, how would you view it?
I think, like you say, it could be very different depending on who it is, even at the elite level. But I think the majority of them, it's going to be frustration. It's going to be the top emotion there, because they will train with these pickup stations. They will have coaches or friends or family or just tables set out on the route that they're going to run, where they train to collect a bottle, pick it up, to take on the fuel at each point. Their body will be very used to taking on this fuel and digesting it at each stage of this marathon. So if they miss it, the frustration that they're going to feel is going to be quite significant. And I wonder then, is that going to be positive or negative? And I think at that point, that's where it depends on who you are, and that impacts whether or not you can channel it into a good performance, perhaps use some extra adrenaline to keep you going, push you on to the next one, or if it could go the other way and the athlete could begin to choke and crumble under the stress a little bit.
Well, it's looking like now that both Chemtot and Krop are up with the leading pair, shall we say, of Negate and Busandic. We've still got the two pacemakers in front.
Well, they've done very, very well to close that gap. It's an important move, and hopefully it doesn't come back to bite them in the latter stages, because the effort exerted to try and get up back on that pace will be quite significant.
So the leading runners still running steadily. As we were saying, it's drifted away a little bit from the target times of around 2:26, or even the course record, a 2:24 mark, which has been there since 2021. But Haile in that, what would you call that, pink or purple? Not quite sure. That pink or purple vest. Still leading the way, leading the train, so to speak. Two other Ethiopians and the Kenyan, Doreen McComan up there. You can see, yes, we are drifting away a little bit from the course record. Now 34 seconds outside that course record. at the moment.
I think it's likely, like you said, Phil, that they're just going to battle it out now and a race amongst themselves. And, of course, these athletes will be very aware of the prize money that we spoke about earlier, and they will know the incentives of going here for a position as opposed to a time now.
But all 4 of these women also, it has to be said, running inside their personal bests as well. And I haven't seen any one of the leading quartet who's actually looking as though they're particularly tired or struggling at all at this stage. Of course, well, it's around 20 kilometres still to go, so there's still a lot of racing yet. But the leading quartet of women still looking very confident. This is actually going to really be a fascinating duel over the final 20 kilometres of the race. Almost cat and mouse stuff.
Oh, absolutely, and I think that's exactly what we're going to see, especially on that women's side. Men's side, I wonder if we're going to start to see them stretch apart even more. I don't know if they're just going to ramp it up past 30 kilometres when the pacemakers do begin to drop out. But Bušindić just dropping off there. And you asked a minute ago, Phil, about, well, what happens if you miss a bottle and the psychological impact? He knocked his bottle over at that previous aid station. He didn't collect it as easily as he'd have hoped to. And that clearly set him back a bit there. We've had to just see him surge to get on the back.
Yes, he's having to work hard, and that sort of uneven running tempo at this stage of the race is really very difficult to control. It can actually disrupt your rhythm. It's hard work. So they're going through 25 kilometres officially in 1:14:57. They're at 25.5 kilometres now. This is the famous Malaga Football Club Stadium, La Rosaleda, the Rose Bowl. So they're at the north side of the centre of the city. I haven't looked to see whether Malaga are playing at home this afternoon. I'll have to have a look. Once this race is over. I've actually been there a few times. I've commentated on a few football games in there. It's a very nice facility, really good. And so we just come down the river, running through the centre of Malaga, runs south to north. There you can see the... Well, I think there's... Yes, there are 5 men. Crops also got back up there, and Kip 2 as well. Well, maybe Kip 2 isn't up there. Bušindić, though, has recovered. But it's definitely Nagate Bušindić now, having bounced back after that problem, as you were saying, with his water bottle.
Yeah, it's important now that he does keep that steady and consistent pace to recover from the surge and the inconsistencies that would have caused him. The accumulated fatigue that can lead to is very significant, especially in something like the marathon. And these guys will be feeling it enough anyway with the hairpin turns that they've got in this course. So it's important that he does just get back into that rhythm.
We were talking about Chemtop a little bit earlier, making his marathon debut. I'm just looking down at my notes. This is, in fact, his first race I've got recorded for 2025. So he's come here having got second place in last year's Tallinn Half Marathon when he ran a personal best of 60:48. Clearly his advisors and his training group reckon he's a man who's in good form, and he's been brought here, 24 years of age, Chemtop. So in sharp contrast, a complete reverse to the women's race. We have 3 Kenyans and 1 Ethiopian at the front, as opposed to the women's race, which it's the other way around.
And we could quite plausibly see a full clean sweep of each podium, potentially.
Yes, I think that's Kit 2, who's just come into shot now. I'm a little bit quizzical about those differences of +3 and +4 seconds. Bušindić is up there without a doubt. I know we were talking here about 25 kilometres, which was almost 2 kilometres ago. But Bušindić very much back in the fray once again. The diminutive punchy figure. There we go, he's in the centre of your screen, Mande Busendic.
Well, looking at the split times that we had at the bottom of the screen then, Matteo, that we mentioned earlier on, going for redemption post-Valencia, looks to be stranded on his own. He was about just under 1:40 off the pace of the chasers, but also about 1.5 minutes ahead of the next chase group. So he's going to be finding this quite tough running at the moment, especially with the course being quite quiet. You mentioned earlier, Phil, there's not a whole lot of support out there. There are some quieter parts of the course. He could be finding that really quite lonely.
But the two men at the front, Busendic still, despite that issue with his water bottle a few kilometres ago, still looking very calm and collected, running very well at the moment, running very smoothly. That slightly ungainly style of Negete, Enu Negete, the Ethiopian, but it's very effective, eating up the ground, and he also looks very relaxed as well. Tot in there.
27k done though, and we're starting to head down into that sweeping downhill that you mentioned, Phil. And I'm starting to wonder if that pace is going to begin to pick up now.
You'd like to think so. Oh, that's rather noisy. Well, at 28.5 kilometres, we turn right. They come down the... So over the course of the next kilometre or so, and then they switch right along the seafront, right along the Mediterranean. They're coming through the underpass.
Well, there's a water station in that underpass. You didn't see any of them really stop and collect water there, and that's because it was just water, no personal drinks allowed at that station. And these athletes will have worked and practiced and perfected their style with just the personal drinks to make themselves more efficient. They won't be taking on any water if they don't need to. You might see one or two deviate off to cool down potentially, but aside from that, there's no real purpose of just water for these elite athletes at this stage in the race.
So for people who may not be familiar with the marathon, you've talked about gels and electrolyte drinks and things like that. Can you just give a brief description as to what literally goes into them?
Yeah, absolutely. So these things are essentially carbohydrate-heavy fueling, and carbohydrates, as people generally know, make up a very large proportion of the energy that we use, whether it's through burning and exercise, day-to-day work, sitting at your desk. When you're working hard at your desk, all of your energy comes from carbohydrates, and it's important when you're working in what is often referred to as zone 2 like this, that you have plenty of carbohydrate stores to use and to burn to get that energy. And when you are running something as long as a marathon, you burn through those quite quickly. So these gels and electrolytes are required to keep those stores topped up so that energy can keep being burned and these athletes can keep going. If they miss a drink or they don't take enough on in the early stages, they'll find their stores very, very depleted, and suddenly they'll find themselves feeling very flat. Muscles won't contract properly, they'll get cramps and things like that, and that's why it's so important to keep yourself topped up on all of these things, whether it be the carbohydrates that you get from the gels or carb drinks, or the electrolytes, which is where you pick up the salts that you lose through sweat.
Thank you very much. I actually learned a lot there as well, although my carb loading, I'm thinking about a couple of pieces of toast, I have to confess.
Well, that's exactly what they'll be eating the day before. Breakfast in the morning will be very carb heavy. The evening before will be pastas, rice, potatoes, bread, anything that they can get their hands on that is carbohydrates, because they are broken down in a way that is quick enough to provide this energy, but not so quick that it's gone before the marathon's over.
Well, back to the race, and a wonderful overhead shot here in this day and age. Nice drone shot of the four leaders. I think we're losing, well, he's sticking in there. I think it's Kiptu at the back, in 5th place at the moment, discounting the pacers. But they're just coming up to the seafront once again. They've been running through the Malaga River, which bisects the east and west sides of the city, and here's that turn onto the seafront. Now they've got about 5.5 kilometres all along the seafront before then taking a sharp right going north. And then they run several kilometres close to the airport, then come back to the seafront again, come into town, and the finish line will be in sight.
Almost didn't really look real, did it, that overhead shot then? But these athletes will be starting to feel themselves edging closer and closer to that long run back for home. We've only got around about 5 minutes or so until these pacemakers can be expected to drop out. They've done a fantastic job, most definitely, in these opening 25-30k, and then these lead men will be kind of unleashed, ready to battle it out for the top prize.
Well, and it'll be a four-man battle when we see the departure of the pacemakers, and at the moment, yes, still very much 4 women in contention there, shoulder to shoulder. Well, the pacemaker, the man in that lime green vest at the front, has really done everything that the women have wanted. They could have asked him to push on further. They're currently on around 2:27 pace at the moment.
Yeah, he looks very relaxed, actually, after Harley.
Yeah, in fact, all 4 of them do. Got the white and orange apparel of Doreen Mokomen. There's one of the quartet, though, just starting to struggle just a little bit at the back. Yes, I think that's Tariku, the third of the Ethiopians up there, who's going through a bit of a bad patch at the moment. But we've still got Mokomen, Haile, and Alemayehu up there. Well, we're not drifting too far away from the course record now. We haven't seen a particular dissolving of the time.
Yeah, I would say, if anything, that means the pace has picked up, really. If we've only lost that 1 second, we're almost back on course record pace in a sense, because the deficit has already been done. So if these athletes can pick it up slightly, we might actually see them just edge closer to it with this downhill section that they're entering now. So it's definitely something to just keep an eye on, not write off for them just yet.
So that course record, I think we've mentioned it a couple of times. Siganesh Mekonnen, 2:24.50. As you can see there from the times at the half and 25 kilometres. At the moment, probably looking at just outside of 2:26, 2:26 and a half. But as Rosie was saying, now we have this gentle but sweeping long downhill stretch from 25 kilometres up to a couple of kilometres before the finish, and we could see them get inside 2:26. Big question, of course, is that once the pacemaker drops out, will these women be looking at each other, just biding their time, or will they try and surge and push it? Will they try and test each other? And that'll have a big effect on the kilometre splits, without a doubt.
It absolutely will, and it'll be, yeah, that'll determine whether or not they're racing the clock or each other. And it'll also be interesting to see what impact the club runners have once the pacemaker goes. They're not the, obviously with the men, once the pacemakers leave it, they are just with the elite men. Of course, that's not the case here. And these women could essentially latch onto the club runners as secondary pacemakers, essentially. So there's a few ways it could go within the next 5k or so, but yeah, it could be very, very interesting. These club runners, though, I've got to say, also looking, whilst perhaps a little bit fatigued now we've hit 25k, still looking relatively smooth.
Well, Tariku there, we can see Alemi to Tariku Alana in vision between the club runner and the pacemaker. She's just starting to look a bit tired. She drifted off the back there and then got back in the group but I have a feeling that she's struggling just a little bit, but she's doing well at this stage. And as I said, same thing with the men, is that these 4 women are all on course for very big PBs at the moment, even if we aren't talking anymore about a course record. So it's Busendic who's taken over the running now. The pacemakers have dropped out, gone to one side of the road. Nagate is trying to chase him, and Busendic has decided that the 30-kilometre point was to really put pedal to the metal and push away. He's just looking around. I mean, he's sprinting like it might be the end of a 10-kilometre race. It's still got 12 kilometres to go in this race. He's still got 35 minutes of running. Well, Nagate perhaps caught a little bit unawares. They're all looking at their watch. I always find that a little bit bizarre, especially if you're just behind the race car. You know exactly, if you've seen the kilometres, you know exactly the time. I mean, yes, of course, maybe they've got a heart rate monitor in there, but I don't see any other apparel and so forth, but they're always looking at their watch.
And there he goes again.
What additional information is that going to tell you?
It's a great question, because even if your heart rate is on there, is that something you're concerned with in a race? I know when I can't say I've ever raced to an elite level, but the last thing that I'm worried about is my heart rate when I'm racing hard, and I'm much more concerned about how I'm feeling and the pace that I'm on. And if I've got a clock in front of me, the watch is not something I'm too concerned about. So it's an interesting thing to look at, most definitely.
I know. I've commentated on a number of particularly marathon races and half marathon races, and a very good friend of mine who's a very well-known commentator, Tim Hutchings, always goes on about it. And at first I was sort of like stroking my beard a little bit and just thinking, what's it all about? But yes, why do so many athletes look at their watches? It doesn't really add any value to their races. Anyway, so this is Krop up there, Zachariah Krop. Well, Krop, not very much experience. He's making his marathon debut. Has run 3 half marathons this year. Best time of 61:19 from last year from the Trento half marathon. That's a quick course, and he's up there. He's put in the work. It looks as though we've lost Kittu and Chemtot. Just wait for confirmation. It's a little bit difficult to see, but I wasn't actually looking at him before the race because he was marathon debutant, so I'm not familiar with the very tall runner in the pinky purple vest. But I do believe it is Zachariah Krop. Of course, nice shot of the new super shoes that everybody's been talking about for a few years.
Oh, you couldn't possibly line up for a marathon without them, could you now? The super shoes have changed the game, really, haven't they? They've been controversial at points, but also revolutionary. And every brand has, of course, developed their own, worked very hard to do that. And there's some top level shoes out there now.
Well, I think it was actually Mike Chemtok who was up there, not Zachariah Krop. Krop was one of the men who dropped back. I just managed to catch a proper glance of his vest as the women go through 27 kilometres.
And as they go through 27 kilometres, suddenly there are no club runners. And it is just the elite women and their pacemaker. The club runners have stretched on ahead. I wonder if they've decided that they've got a little bit more work to do, and these athletes are more concerned about racing each other and picking each other up, picking up the prize money, I should say, as opposed to worrying too much about what the club runners are focused on now.
Yeah, so it will vary, of course. We've seen a number of those runners. We can see 3 or 4 men in front of this 4-strong group of women at the front who've moved on. I'm sure many have drifted back as well. Mind you, it's a strong race for club runners last year. We saw 10 men inside 220, so there's a very sharp elite end. There's a lot of good runners running 2.8, 2.9, 2.10, but there isn't a great deal of depth, and then the club runners are coming through at around the 220 mark. So last year there was only about 30 runners inside 230 last year. I'm just looking through last year's results. Yes, 31 male runners inside 230 last year. Although a lot of those men between 220 and 230 did get personal bests. So as we've been saying before, this is very much a course which, if you're in shape and you're a good standard club runner, or perhaps just getting to the verge of international standard, you want to run a quick time, this is one of the places where you can come to do it.
Yeah, it's great timing as well. The weekend after Valencia, if you can't get into Valencia, it's a great option following that, because of course Valencia being very popular, it's actually going to be a ballot marathon for the first time next year, so athletes will be struggling to get positions there, and we all know what the ballot look can be like. So it's another reason why it's a fantastic option to go for Malaga the weekend after instead.
So Busandic with that high arm cadence, being serenaded down the streets of Malaga. Mike Chetot, tall, rangy athlete, just following in his footsteps. Negate, the Ethiopian, in third place at the moment, just tucked in behind the two Kenyans. And it's often a little bit deceptive when you're looking at the cameras on a motorbike. Of course, Rosie and myself, we're at the finish line, just actually gauging the pace. But it does look as though Busandic is putting in a stint here, trying to surge and trying to pull away with about 30 minutes of running still to go. And it's looking at this stage as though very much on for a course record. The fastest time ever in the Generali Marathon Malaga, the Malaga Marathon.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm obviously watching as Busandic really just starts to pull away here, and I'm wondering what point made him decide, or what was it that made him think this is a good place to do this? Another half an hour of running on your own after putting in such an intense surge like this. It is really quite a significant duration, and it's it's a long run for home, given that the energy that he's having to expend to pull this off.
Well, he surged at 30 kilometres as soon as the pacemakers dropped out, and then I think that was a testing surge, and saw what Negate and Chetot came back at him, got dropped initially, caught Negate by surprise as well, and now this is a really decisive move at this stage. So he's got about 10 kilometres of running still to go, and he's put some distance between himself and Negate of Ethiopia and Chetot of Kenya. Mande Busandic now. Is this going to be a Malaga Marathon winning surge, I should say?
Well, it looks like it really could be, doesn't it? As he makes his way over to the other side of that red line, he's following his race line as strongly as he can now. And he doesn't look like he's going to be letting up at all. That surge is unrelenting. That's a very, very brave move.
So it's got about 9 kilometres still to go. Pushing very hard. Just the leg speed. So he's gone through 33 kilometres just there. He's so much quicker than the men behind him. Well, the two men much taller, more rangy athletes. They're going to eat up a bit more ground with every stride, but he's powering away now. Busandic really working very hard. And this will be a terrific run from Busandic if he's to be able to sustain this all the way through to the line. Certainly getting encouragement from the race officials, people working with the local organisers of this race.
Looks like we've had a change, though, over in the leading women's race. We'll have to wait to get a bit of a wider picture, potentially, to see exactly what's going on there. But it looks like we now just have that one elite woman. It's going to be interesting to see what has happened with the rest of the group of those other three drifted off the back. What has occurred there to make that happen? But at the moment, at the front of this race, the elite women looks pretty decided. And it is Hailey, Emena Seifu Hailey, who is leading the way. She's been at the front of this lead pack for the majority of this marathon, I should say. She's sat there pretty comfortably in the pack, looking not too stressed, not too fussed about whether or not she's tucked in directly behind the pacemaker or tucked in second or third. And at the moment, she's just on her own.
Well, impressive running from Hailey, just going through the 29-kilometre mark. So 13 kilometres. Oh, well, we were fooled by the director there. I do owe you an apology. In fact, it's Hailey who's getting dropped. Well, the way that we were looking at it, it did look as though she was breaking away, but I think we'd better correct ourselves there.
So as we approach the 30-kilometre mark now, we've still got three of those elite women leading the way. Hailey, unfortunately, unable to stay with the pace as we enter the final 12 kilometres or so. And these three women that are left will look to battle it out for the big money towards the end. We've got a club runner joining them as well. I'm sure they'll be grateful for the extra bit of company once the pacemaker does drop. Won't be that much longer now until he does.
So it's Alemayehu at the front. You can see there in shot, Doreen McComan in the white and orange. Alemayehu just in front of her and behind, having clearly gone through that bad patch that she had a little bit earlier. Alamitu Tariku. And Busendic still flying away at the front. He's just gone through 34 kilometres now. And I'd love to know what that split was for that last kilometre, because I think that's probably one of the quickest of the men's races. I'm fairly sure that was a sub 3 minute split, just the way he was pumping away here and working so hard.
Yeah, it would be great to see that, wouldn't it? He's unrelenting. It is fantastic. Unbelievable almost to see. He's kind of got me a bit lost for words, if I'm honest.
I love that word, though, that you did use, unrelenting. I think that encapsulates it beautifully. If there was one word to use over the last 4 or 5 kilometres from Busendic, it would be exactly that. That really does give a nice picture of the way that he's actually just been driving this race from the front. Well, now he's moving north, come off the seafront, back with the women's race, and we have got the leaders this time.
We do. We are confident in that one this time round, and it looks like we could just be seeing 3 become 2. It's a tricky part of the marathon here, where if you're going through a rough patch and you do get cut adrift, it can be very difficult to recover from.
There's somebody who is being cut adrift, I'm afraid. It's
that is Hailey still trying to not lose them too much and just stay in touch, but unfortunately, I think that's the best she can do for the time being, at least. And now it looks like we just have the one athlete on the back of the pacemaker, and that is Alemayehu, happily sat leading the way. So when this pacemaker does go, it won't be long now. She's going to be out front running on her own, and now we're into the athletic stadium and I don't know, straight back out pretty much.
Yeah, it is. Well, I was there in that athletic stadium back in 2006 when we had the European Cup. That's now the European Team Championships there. It wasn't completely built at the time. We were covered in dust half the time, but it did finally get finished a few years after that, and now it's an extremely good facility. Yeah, it wasn't the best of championships, I have to say. We also got the Ciudad de Malaga Stadium right by it, which, as I said at the start of the program, houses the Atlético Malagueño team, which is in the 4th tier. So 35 kilometers, 7 to go. Went through unofficially in 1:44.35, and it is Mande Busendic who is still powering along, really throwing down the gauntlet to the rest of the elite field. And just look at that, he's over a minute inside the course record now. I think we can say with some confidence that we are going to see the first ever sub 2:07. Busendic just doesn't look as though he's tying up. He looks as though he's still got plenty of running in his legs.
I think looking at those splits in the bottom left of the screen, it's just phenomenal. The last 10K, he has doubled that deficit on the course record. It is absolutely phenomenal when you think about the injection of pace that would have required over the last 6 miles.
Well, further down the line we'll get the kilometre splits, but I think those last couple of kilometres will be amongst the fastest that we've seen. I think I was calling him Kenyan at early parts of the race, but he is definitely Ugandan, and you can see there the Ugandan flag in the lower left-hand side of your corner. Just like to correct that impression I might have given earlier in the race. It's not a bad second marathon for him, considering his first one was a 2:08 effort in a local race in Uganda when he actually finished back in 9th place. So he's come back with quite some aplomb.
Yeah, hasn't he just? This is a performance to rival the second marathon of Alex Yee, really. When you look at the improvements he made in Valencia last weekend following his debut in London. Absolutely incredible, and this is something of a similar caliber.
It's interesting, just listening to that footfall slapping. It's so rapid, that cadence. Well, I have to say, bouncing back in this way after that rather modest first marathon back in August. He wasn't selected for the Ugandan World Championship team, so I think we'll have to go and chat to him after the race and find out what his thinking was about doing that. Maybe it was just really even a training run. And now he's put 31 seconds between himself and Mike Chematot, marathon debutant, who's also having a good run. Negat, NAU Negat, 10 seconds further back, and then 2 Kenyans, Kiptu and Krop. Kiptu and Krop still running though inside 2:07.30. So both men on for big personal bests. In fact, all those top 5 looking as though they're going to go into new territory for this classic distance. So now he's starting to come back and charge, and as Rosie would say, in an unrelenting fashion, all the way through to the finish line.
Yeah, he really is showing no signs of slowing down at all. There's no kind of flicker of weakness or fatigue in there.
Getting roared on by some volunteers, and a big shout out to all the volunteers around this course. I mean, Mande Busendic doesn't need much help, but certainly some of the 11,000 runners who are also taking part in this morning's marathon will really just being enjoyed, being encouraged and cheered on. Mande Busendic looking very focused though. He's not paying much attention to anything else that's going on around him, but this is a huge community event, and these are record fields that Mande Busendic is coming home in front of at this stage. And it's now starting to look as though it's Mandy Busendic's race to lose. He's got about 16 minutes of running ahead of him. Just over 5 kilometres. And he still hasn't eased up at all over that last 3 or 4 kilometres. He's just pushing so hard. And just looking at these pictures, it's very difficult to get an impression. But when you stand beside a marathon course, you realise how quickly these men are going.
Yeah, it really is just breathtaking when you see live how quick these athletes are running and how much ground they're covering. What appears to be effortlessly is just phenomenal. And we mentioned earlier on that 3:01 per kilometre pace, he's going to be well underneath that at the moment. He's going to have blown that out of the water for these recent kilometres, and that is just mind-blowing.
Well, I can remember, and turning the clock back here about 30 years, watching my very first London Marathon on the streets of London. And those were the days when the winners were running around 2:10, 2:11. And I was just staggered by their speed. And these men are running 5 minutes faster and the rest over this marathon course. And one also has to remember that the very elite, those men winning London and Valencia these days, are running probably 5 minutes faster than Mandy Busendic as well. Nevertheless, a race like this is going to get him shoulder to shoulder with those athletes, the likes of the winners of the London, Valencia and Berlin marathons. This time next year, he'll have probably, I would like to guess, have run in one of those super elite races. So Mandy Busendic, well, we're into the 38th kilometre now. Went through 35 kilometres, 1:44.34. There's Mike Chemtop. And just look at the difference in leg speed. Now, Chemtop, much taller, much more rangy athlete. And it has to be said that the long-time contender for the lead, Negete of Ethiopia, nowhere to be seen at the moment. He's disappearing off back down the road. But Chemtop's at the moment in second place. We think about 30 to 35 seconds behind Busendic.
Yeah, I would say that sounds about right at the moment. He actually looks very relaxed and very strong, considering that he is cut adrift from the rest of the others as well. He's also putting in a very solid solo effort here, and it's not an easy run for home. 4 kilometres or so that they've got left. It is quite a significant distance, but yeah, I think he's done a very decent job to get himself out ahead and hopefully secure that second place.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing Busendic go through 38 kilometres. Hopefully we'll be able to catch it, and then we'll be able to get a very good estimate as to what they might come home in. I got a feeling we're looking at the low 2:06s here. We'll be able to give you a slightly more accurate impression, and he really is pouring it on. And when we look at the final times, I think Busendic will have run a very significant negative split on this race. And that's, well, we're now very much used to negative splits in a marathon. It seems to have become the tactic over the last 10 years. Before then, it was quite often a case of hanging on. When a runner did produce a negative split, there was a certain slight jaw-dropping moment. But nowadays, it seems to have been a change in the tactics of elite marathon runners. So he went through halfway in 63.15, and he's just kept pouring it on. So Busendic now looking very strong, but the women still battling for supremacy.
Yeah, most definitely, and our lead two are still pretty much together. These two athletes are around about the 1:54 mark at the moment. That's going to lead us up towards 35k. So I reckon they're sat at about 33-ish at the moment. So they've got about 9 kilometres to go. Our pacemaker's still there, actually. He was given the option to drop out at 30k, so he's going to keep pushing them over. There's the 33-kilometre mark. We've just passed it in 1:53.52 unofficially. So interesting to see the pacemaker hanging in there, and whether or not he'll take them the whole way through the full 42.
I don't like the fact that he's still in there. I think he should move to the side of the road and let the women get on with the racing. Yes, of course, in a mixed race like this, you're going to have club runners up there as well. But I'm definitely of the opinion that the pacemaker should get out and let the women battle it away head to head, and let's see what their mettle is. I've seen this in a lot of races. I commentating on a race a few years ago in India where the pacemaker took them through to about 400 meters before the line, and I think it distorts the race slightly, but nevertheless he has done a great job. I sound as though I'm really piling on him at this stage, but he did a great job during the first 25-30 kilometers, which is what he's paid to do. But now it's let the women get on and battle it out for first place.
Yeah, I suppose it naturally inhibits, doesn't it, any race that you can have any true head-to-head, because of course you want to sit behind the pacemaker, conserve your energy. So it's yeah, it definitely adds a different dynamic. But Gerald looking like she might be deciding to make a move, coming out wide to that left-hand side. Her left-hand side, I should clarify there, right hand of your screen. And she's just contemplating whether or not she decides to go past this pacemaker or tuck back in, and it looks like she might have just decided against making any major moves at this stage.
Yeah, I think it's a question of, to use your phrase, distorting the race. I mean, the club runner in there who's doing very well himself. I mean, I can only admire somebody who can run a 2:28 marathon. He's not really engaged in the race. They're not looking at him, but they are looking at the pacemaker. And now it's Alemayehu starting to work quite hard now, starting to put a little bit of a gap between herself and McComan. We don't see any of the other women, though. We had Tariku up there for a while, but we're down to 2 women now, and it's looking as though, well, it's a little bit more imperceptible than the surge we saw from Busendich, but it does look as though Miskan Alemayehu is starting to move away now from Doreen McComan.
Well, this elite men's race is turning into something very impressive. Busendich off and away. There's literally nobody else in sight. As you take a look down that long straight, you actually can't see anybody else there as we approach the 2-hour mark. He's got about 9 minutes left of running, and that's going to feel like nothing to him now. I'm sure he can't wait for the finish, but 9 minutes in the grand scheme of the 2 hours and 6 is a very minimal part of this marathon, and he can really begin to run unafraid.
Well, we're seeing there some of the other men coming through 35 kilometres. We saw Alex Carter there, just over 8 minutes behind Amanda Busendich, and Carter, we'll give him a shout out because we know we've got a big British audience watching this, looking out for the British runners in this race, looking for glimpses perhaps of some of the many hundreds of British club runners. So Carter, well, he's 8 minutes behind at the moment. I make it on course that he's going to get a personal best by a couple of minutes if he can maintain his form. And believe it or not, I think we could even have a national record a little bit further back. We saw there that Cote d'Ivoire's Jonathan Atse Herrera there, 10 minutes behind Busendich at the moment. Well, he's the Cote d'Ivoire Ivory Coast record holder at 2:19, and he looks as though he's going to shave a couple of minutes off that. So we were talking about Valencia last weekend having a plethora of national records. Maybe we'll get one a bit further down the rankings here in Malaga. But at the moment, we're back at the sharp end of the men's race, led by Mandy Busendich, and this is Mike Chemtot in second place. He's doing well, but he is starting to look very tired.
Yeah, you can see his head's just starting to wobble a little bit more than it was earlier on. His stride length perhaps a little bit shorter. He still looks very relaxed. He's not too tense. He doesn't look strained as such. Just perhaps a little bit drained instead.
I think you've got a dictionary somewhere tucked in all the preparation notes.
I'll pack one next time.
Anyway, Mande Busandic continuing, driving his way home. About 5.5, 6 minutes of running ahead of him. And he's just doing an absolutely fantastic job.
Well, over on the women's side, it looks like Doreen Gerop McCuhen has been dropped. We can see her start. She looked like she was about to try and make a move a few moments ago and then decided against it and dropped off the pace ever so slightly. And it looks like that has been quite significant. And now it is just Alamayehu who's sat on the pacemaker at the moment as they come around the athletic stadium. But all eyes on the front of the men's race at the moment.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So we're now back on the Paseo Antonio Machado, named after the famous Spanish poet from the 20s through to the World War II era. I think you could, well, this is poetry in motion from Mande Busandic. And now we're back in the city centre, moving back towards the Old Town and the finish line. Finish line in the local park, just in front of Rosie and myself.
He has got to be careful as he comes along these streets. They're slightly uneven, and we saw him not quite stumble, but his stride was impacted slightly by a speed bump a few moments ago.
Yeah, they don't quite have the luxury of London and being able to lay out carpet and even out all the bumps and holes in the road. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is the paving is a little bit uneven, and at this sort of pace, that can make a difference. Fortunately, that very slick paving has also dried out. We did have a lot of rain overnight, but the wonderful conditions here. I mean, it's been about 13 degrees, no wind, which was our great fear earlier, or only a very light breeze. There's no stopping Mande Busandic now. Well, he's been to a number of major championships in the past, All Africa Games, on the track and cross-country, World Cross-Country Championships, but this is, without doubt, the biggest race of Mande Busandic's life. 28 years old, and he's going to get a major marathon victory under his belt, and this is going to resonate all the way back to Uganda. Now, Uganda, fantastic group of top-class marathon runners, but Mande Busandic, the way things are going, he's propelling himself into that group. Includes the likes of Joshua Cheptegei, Jacob Kitlimo, and many, many others coming from that country. Well, Busandic's head is just starting to rock, but it's not making any significant difference to his pace.
The pace is staying pretty consistent by the looks of it. I mean, of course, it would be great to see some splits at some stage, but 41 kilometres done, and that surge that he put on around the 30-kilometre mark, it's been unrelenting, really. And it's there's that word again.
And it's a very good word. I will certainly use it many other occasions. Unrelenting. He has been unrelenting. Absolutely right.
But he just, the momentum that he's gained from it, it's just feeding him more and more now, isn't it? He almost can't slow down. Well,
the big question now is he going to break 2:06? I have a feeling it might just be a second or two outside that 2:06, but what he is going to do is he's going to take more than a minute off the course record. Barring accidents, he's got less than 3 minutes of running to go now. Well, those extra 200 metres you sometimes don't take into consideration. It's another 30 seconds of running. Everybody talks about it being 42 kilometres, but it's actually just a little bit more than 42 kilometres. But Busandic now, it doesn't matter. I think he'd look great if he had another 10 kilometres to run. He's piling it on. He knows now, whether he's looking at his watch or he's looking at the lead car, that he's well within the course record. You can see the Christmas decorations above the streets of Malaga, but the fireworks have been provided this morning by Mandy Busendic of Uganda, who broke away at 30 kilometres. They got back up with him a couple of kilometres later and then surged again, pushing away. Well, the crowds are lining the streets over this final kilometre. He's not enjoying the moment just yet, despite all those frequent glances at his watch. But he will certainly have a big smile on his face very shortly. Wonderful medals as well that are going to be hung around his neck. Have you seen the medals, Rosie? The fish design?
I can't say that I have, actually.
Oh, Rosie.
I've seen the half marathon medals that are floating around already. We've had some of the finishes coming through, but it's going to be quite something for him to receive this medal. It's one he's going to treasure after this performance.
Yeah, he's going to be the very first man out of about 11,000 runners to get one of those medals hung around his neck. So Busendic, you can see there some of the half marathon runners still out on the course, some of the people who are going to be coming home in about 5 hours, just inside that time limit on this course. But now you can see it. Mandy Busendic, it's Busendic against the clock. He's just got a couple of 100 meters to go. Can he get inside 2 hours and 6 minutes? He smashed the course record by much more than a minute. Now it's Busendic against the clock. A personal best is guaranteed. A course record is guaranteed. It's just a question now as to what time the clock stops on. He's coming up. He's coming through the line. Just outside 2:06, Mandy Busendic of Uganda takes the Malaga Marathon title. Unofficially 2:06.9, a phenomenal run. He's taken a minute and a half off the course record, and now he can relax. He's out on his feet, but he never stopped. And that great word from Rosie Tinbergen sitting beside me. Over the last 10 kilometres, he was totally and utterly unrelenting.
He certainly was, and I've been sitting here, Phil, trying to think of another word to describe it, and there just isn't one, because he's been phenomenal in those last 10 kilometres. It's superhuman to put in a surge like that, to break the rest of the pack, to assume, as commentators, that he would then relax a little bit and enjoy the gap that he's built, and it just wasn't the case. He just kept going and going and going. I've never seen anything like it. To be able to dig that deep is really, really something, and that is just truly mind-blowing.
Well, coming home just over a minute behind in second place, Mike Chemtop now. Marathon debut, a really good performance from this Kenyan. He's got some good half marathon credentials to his name, but now going over the full distance. Well, just the difference in speed between him and Busendic. I think he's taking it relatively easy now. He's checked behind him. He knows he's unchallenged for second place on his debut. A few seconds here or there, he's probably not going to matter too much in the great scheme of things. So he's just got just over 100 meters to go. Loping along this Kenyan runner. So Chemtop moves up from being a very creditable half marathon runner, having come through very strongly in the second half of the race, to come through the line. Well, Busendic is taking the plaudits. Mike Chemtop crosses the line in 2:08.16 unofficially. I keep saying unofficially. Still need to check the official times. Well, they're giving Busendic as 2:06.07. They've managed to very quickly put that placard together. Big congratulations from Chemtop and also the race organisers and the local dignitaries.
Absolutely, and it's, yeah, I am just blown away by watching the finish there of Busendic, but I mean, if we look at the time there, it was a 2:08 low. It's not actually a million miles away from the old course record now for second place. And it, again, shows the calibre of the field that we've had today in Malaga, that course record was always in danger regardless.
Well, there's Mazenge in 4th place, and I think in front of him it's Samuel Kiptu. Kiptu looking very, very heavy-legged. Mazenge clearly went through a bad patch, but looks as though he might just sneak in under 2:10, picking up his... Oh, Kiptu is in all sorts of trouble. But Mazenge coming here, second fastest man on the start line. Well, 39 years of age now, Mazenge of Norway, enjoying, taking the plaudits to the crowd. Quite a bit of a showman, wearing number 1. Zedai Mazenge of Norway. Well, he looked so calm and so comfortable over the first half of the race, and then once Busanic started to increase the pace and ratcheted up coming into the 30 kilometers, started to struggle a bit. But he did well to come back over the, let's just say, we didn't see very much of him, but let's just say the last 7 or 8 kilometers to get back up into a medal position.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's, we say, obviously spoke about the phases and stuff that you can go through in a marathon, and I think he clearly did go through a bit of a phase, an unfortunate point in the sense of the timing of when Busanic made his break. It was ideal for Busanic to go and optimise the impact of it, but Mazenge suffered there because it was unfortunately a tough patch for him in the marathon. And yeah, I think he clearly came through it and he was able to put in a very strong kind of final 7K or so, but yeah, just incredible tactics really from our winner.
Well, the biggest smile on the face there is Mazenge in 3rd place. I think he was just happy to put in a creditable performance after his meltdown in Tokyo at the championships. He was, of course, not the only one there. It was brutally hot conditions there. There's the official times. Mande Busanic, course record by some margin, 2:06.07, taking 32 seconds, 1 minute 32 seconds off the previous course record. Mike Chemtop followed him home, and in 3rd place, Zedai Mazenge.
Well, pictures shift back to the women then, and our lead woman is, oh, she's out on her own, isn't she? There's no one really to challenge her at the moment. We've gone past the 35-kilometre mark, and that gap between herself and the course record, it is getting smaller. It's at 28 seconds now, and I think it perhaps just a little bit beyond her reach, but it is decreasing as Alamayehu takes on some water. There you can see the splits at the bottom of your screen. 31 seconds at 15K and now 28 at 35. So she is inching close to that course record. Now she's out on her own. The pacemaker's still there. We were a little bit surprised at that earlier on to see that he hadn't dropped out at 30 kilometres, and the other women have just faded away somewhat. It looks like it is going to be these two taking it all the way through to the line.
So after the picture of the top 5, the men's
So coming home in the men's race, one of the most recognisable faces in this Malaga Marathon, Daniel Mateo. Well, he got detached from the leading group quite early on, but has stayed the pace and coming through in just outside 2:13. So a good performance from Mateo, leading Spaniard. And into the bargain, he'll pick up a nice little cheque for €1,000 as the leading Spaniard, as well as a little bit of prize money. We've got him down at the moment in 5th place, but we were watching the women's leaders. So after struggling over the course of the last few months, once again gets a bit of validation today here in Malaga.
Yeah, absolutely, and put the demons to bed after last weekend in Valencia as well, being unable to finish there, even if it wasn't quite the European qualifying time that he wanted. It was a significant improvement on last weekend's performance.
Certainly very familiar, very popular figure, Mateo. Just unpacking the race, looking at the body language. 1:25 So we've got about 12 minutes, maybe even a little bit less of running in the women's race.
I've got to say, it looks like the second place elite woman isn't in sight at the moment. Alamayehu happily ticking along there, sat in just behind her pacemaker. We'll be coming up to the 40-kilometre mark pretty soon. I mean, in the next kind of 3.5 minutes or so. But she doesn't look too stressed at the moment. She looks quite relaxed, pretty easy going. No major signs of fatigue on her face. The head still in a very strong position. Shoulders are not rocking too much. It's a nice smooth arm drive and stride length. The pacemaker similarly also looking quite happy at the moment. It's a slight grimace on his face in comparison, but nothing major.
Yes, just coming back to my theme of I think the pacer truthfully should drop out, is the fact that the pacer now is only there for Alamayehu. He's not there for the rest of the women. And the point of the pacemaker is to take the group of women, the leaders, through to a fixed point. Let's just say 30 kilometres or maybe 25 kilometres. But now he's just really working for her. And I think, as I said, I think usually a pacemaker should be dropping out at around the 30-kilometre mark in a women's marathon race, and perhaps at about 15 kilometres in a half marathon race. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
Either way, Alamayehu looking strong, looking relaxed, looking easy as she makes her way around out on her own. The wind has just picked up a touch by the looks of it. The trees are not quite as still as they were half an hour ago or so, but nothing too major. And you can see there the gap back to second, 11 seconds, and third, we've got a full minute. So Alamayehu relatively comfortable at the moment, can't afford to relax too much, but has enough breathing space to get in her stride, get in her rhythm and enjoy the remaining few kilometres, if that's humanly possible anyway.
Yes, and of course Alamayehu, those times from 35 kilometres, which was about 4 kilometres ago, and it certainly looks like that Doreen McComan has drifted back quite significantly. Not quite sure what's going on behind Alamayehu at the moment. Wait and see. Tariko going back significantly further, but we'll bring you up to date in what's going on further down the women's race very shortly. I'm just looking, staring. We're working off a television screen near the finish line, so we're not actually seeing the race in person, so to speak. And I can't see McComan anywhere in camera shots. I think she's significantly further back than 11 seconds. But as I say, that was about 4 kilometres ago.
Well, it won't be long until we do hit that 40-kilometre mark. We'll get an updated idea. A quick glance at the watch there as well. Alamayehu also keeping tabs on the paces and stuff herself. But got one more drink station for her to collect a personal drink from, perhaps, for the final 2 and a bit K. And that's when we'll get that final updated idea of exactly where the rest of the field lie. There's the chase group, and you can see the wide angle. There is no one really in sight, as Doreen Jetrop looks to be fatiguing somewhat. You can see the arms swaying side to side as she checks her watch every few strides. Not quite the compact style that we saw a few moments ago. McComan really keeping an eye, just almost begging those final few K to pass her by the looks of things. And she's really not quite comfortable. Well, you can hear the crowd starting to rise in volume as our lead woman does begin to enter those final few K. It gets busier and busier as you head towards that finish area, of course. You've got not only just spectators, but the finishers of the half marathon as well. That half has been ongoing simultaneously to the full today, and there's been several thousand athletes in the mass race of that as well. There's been no elite field in the half. We have been solely focused on the full. That's Alamehu making her way down towards 40K now.
Well, we've just been given the list of the leading finishers in the men's race, and you've seen the 1, 2, 3 home: Busandic, Chematot and Mazengi. Samuel Kip2 was fourth in 2:10.09. Anyo Negat, who we saw a lot of in the early stage of the race, up there with the leaders, 2:11.03. Zachariah Krop again drifting back over the final kilometres, 2:11.34. Daniel Mateo finished 7th in the end. We saw him. Thought he was 5th, but we didn't see a couple of the other runners coming in front of him. 2:13.14. Habtom Emmanuel, the Eritrean-born athlete refugee team member, 2:13.33. And then, for our British listeners and viewers, Alex Carter. It was indeed a personal best for Carter, 2:16.39 in 9th place. Just to do the right thing, complete out the top 10. Maxwell Rotich of Uganda, 2:17.30. So that's the top 10 from the men's race, and we'll have confirmation of those standings a bit later. But as I say, I know we've got a big group of British viewers as well, so a big shout out to Alex Carter.
Yeah, absolutely, and great that he's had a strong run. But Alamayehu has passed the 41-kilometre marker now, and that will be a blissful sight for her. Not quite the job we necessarily anticipated. No solo run for her, given the pacemaker has extended his duties, but Alamayehu will be exceedingly pleased to see that finish line, I'm sure. It's not easy when the rest of your competition fades away, so whilst the pacemaker might be there to help her, the extra push of being chased in close proximity has faded away. She had plenty for company in the early stages. 4 of the elite women in that group, where they were joined by several very high-quality club runners who are looking in and around that similar sort of timing mark. But one by one, they did begin to drift away. And Alamayehu, the last one standing. Doreen McComan looking fatigued as our sole chaser at the moment. That pattern in her arms, the swinging really is becoming more lateral. That's always a clear sign of fatigue, especially in marathon runners. But the finish inching ever closer for Alamayehu now. She makes her way underneath the Christmas lights. One last check of her watch, or hopefully one last check of her watch. There's not very far to go. She keeps an eye on the clock. 2:26.30 was the aim. That's what the pacer was asked for in the early stages. They dropped it off a little bit, and now he's waving her past. He's saying, go on, final stretch, you don't need me for this bit, and he's exactly right. Alamayehu she's had a strong run as those split times began to close back down on the course record. It won't quite be there, but she's not going to be a million miles away. The women's course record, of course, was 2:24.50, so we're not quite going to see that today. But for Miss Gagné Alamayehu, the finish is now in sight. Big cheers from the crowds that do line the streets as her and her pacemaker are stride for stride now. He's egging her on. So our elite woman, she's not going to be a million miles away. The stadium announcer, or the course announcer's pushing her on for the course record. She's now going to be very, very close, actually, much closer than we anticipated, but arms are aloft, and Alamayehu can enjoy her victory now. She's on the red carpet, 2:24.42. And that is not something that we saw coming, is it, Phil?
It is. It shaves about 5 seconds off the course record. And what a fantastic performance from her. Well, and she can't believe it either. When we look back at those splits, I mean, they were outside of the course record up to about 35 kilometres. So she must have put in a really good stint over that final 7 kilometres from the 5 kilometre point. 2:24.33, 43. Shaves 7 seconds off the course record. So she goes away with another check for €1,000 for a course record, in addition to her first prize check of €3,000.
That's a very, very good day at the office for both our elite winners. It's been some superb performances, and I mean, we knew the men were on for it from the get-go, really. They were like clockwork heading through, ticking off that time bit by bit, but what a stint at the end Alamayehu must have had to have put in to reverse those splits.
Well, I have to say, I didn't think a course record was on, even up to about 35 kilometres. They were outside the course record. They ran a very modest first half of the race, as we saw. So that's a fantastic second half of the race from Alamayehu.
We did say it might pick up on that slow sweep down from about 25k, but now we've got Doreen Jepop McComan heading in for her second place now. She tried to stick with the pace, but it must have just lifted significantly, as we've seen, to reverse those splits and to do a bit of damage in that elite women's lead pack. But McComan heading in her personal best, 2:27.13. She's got about 30 seconds to get underneath that now. And suddenly her form comes back. She looks stronger. She can smell the personal best. McComan is going to take second in the elite women's race, and it's going to shave a few seconds off that PB. 7 seconds to be exact. Oh, 3 seconds, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong bit of my notes. 3 seconds, it's not far, is it? It's not much, but a personal best is a personal best.
Absolutely. She's looking very tired, though. But there we have it, as we switch away from McConan, who finished second, to the winner in 2 hours, 24 minutes and 43 seconds. A new course record for Ms. Gan Alamayehu of Ethiopia. Well, she was all smiles at the start, and, well, certainly the effort's taken its toll, but she'll be certainly smiling a little bit later on when she has the medal hung around her neck. Only her second marathon, and of course when she sees those few €1,000 in her bank account.
I'm sure that will definitely provide a few smiles, a little bit of joy. I'm sure it's definitely on the way. The fatigue, though, I think anyone can forgive these marathoners for not being able to quite crack a full smile after what has been a tough day at the office. Conditions have been fantastic. It's been much better than we perhaps thought it might be. But our podium about to be rounded out now. The number of this athlete does seem to have taken a bit of a battering.
Yeah, this is Tariko coming through. We saw a lot of her up there with the leading group until Alamayehu broke away. And again, another very tired athlete just over these final 100 meters or so.
Ahí va a estar en la barrera del 29. El aplauso para ella, la tercera mujer aquí en Málaga. ¡Ánimo, ánimo! Último
So Tariko Just coming through the line now. 2:29.05. So, tell you what, Rosie, shaves a personal best by 2 seconds, even tighter than McConan.
Even tighter. I was just about to say it's a 2-second PB, and that is over a marathon distance. That is quite something, isn't it? 2 seconds is
it's not very much.
It's really fine, calling it, putting it very, very fine. But it's, hey, like you said, like we said a minute ago, a PB is a PB. It's still the fastest she has ever covered that distance, and that is a huge achievement for our top three today.
Well, McConan, oh dear. I think she's going to be stiff. She'll probably want to get iced down. She looks very, very tired, does the Kenyan who finished second there. Well.
Yeah, there was a point in the final 7 kilometres or so where she did look a little bit stiff and almost as if perhaps a hamstring or an adductor muscle was a little bit tight. So she'll definitely be wanting to make sure that that's okay, and she's comfortable as soon as possible.
So there we have the women's podium. Ms. Ghana Lemayaku winning in a course record of 2:24.43, followed home by Doreen Merkomen. Just had to check my notes there after 2.5 hours of commentary. And Alamitu Tariku in third as the race organisers just gathering them up. There you can see the medal. Look, it's got nice little fishes on it.
Absolutely fantastic medal, actually. It's a great design. And it's you can even see it rotates around in the middle, which is brilliant, really. But,
I like that. I like that design. Somebody's put a lot of thought into that. Usually you just get a little circular one which has just been stamped out with the... No, that's a nice medal. I like that one. I'd be very proud of that if I'd earned it.
As they all should be. A marathon is, no matter the time, an incredible achievement. So I'm sure all the finishers will be very pleased with theirs when they receive it.
So Lemayaku finishing 17th overall in the race. So she actually gets into the overall top 20. McConan 23rd as we look at this nice overhead shot of Malaga. Up there, the castle, the Gibralfaro. The castle dating from the medieval times. Originally it was the Arab fortifications, and then later on it switched to being the Spaniards. Of course, Malaga, wonderful influences over the years. It's been here since almost 1,000 years BC, so we're into the almost the third millennia of Malaga in existence. You're looking at me. I looked it up beforehand.
I'm sure you did. I think that's really quite impressive.
Just gathering, we can see there the women's medalists all together for the obligatory shot. Well, I have to say, I mean, I said it already, is that performance from Lemayaku really caught me by surprise. As I say, we're going to have to check back on the splits because, of course, we were focusing quite a lot on the men's race. But they Lemayaku must have put in some very, very good splits, I think, between about 33 and 38 kilometres to actually break away. She was on her own over the last 4 kilometres.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we, of course, didn't necessarily have a lot of focus on that final kind of 4 or 5K really for the women because we were watching the men's finish. But yeah, she must have put in a real surge and was able to hold that for quite some distance, because that is an incredible piece of work to minimise what was around about a 30-second deficit down on the old course record.
I was just wondering, how's your legs? Do you fancy a quick wander up this afternoon, up to the Gibralfaro?
I'm sure we can make that work.
I think so. We've got a bit of time on our hands. Go off, get a coffee, and then climb Malaga's most prominent tourist attraction, I think. So here we see some of the good men's club runners coming home, some of the women as well. That's Dina Alexandrova, the Russian. Alexandrova started out life as a middle distance runner. She went to European Under-20 Championships. She's a 2:01 800-meter runner. And she's coming home, we think, in 4th place here. She was up there in the early part of the race and just ran her own race really over the second half. She wasn't in the main group of 4 once they started to move away from the rest of the elite women's field. So she just decided to run her own race. Hasn't quite crossed the line yet, the Russian. One of the few Russians who've been cleared to compete internationally for reasons I think we all know about. There she goes, there's Alexandrova. She looks as though she's still got a bit of running left in her.
I'm sure once she sits down and seizes up a little bit, that will quickly change, and you can see there already she's...
Actually, it's not. I thought at a distance it was her, but it's Christina Hendel of Germany, another late entrant. She's a 2:27 runner. She was just looking for a race. She a bit outside of her personal best, so first of the women home not to set a personal best, but it is indeed Christina Hendel. My mistake. I do apologise. (2:34.47 for Hendel in 4th place. You can see the DJ, now that the grassroots runners and the club runners are coming home, has ramped up the decibels.
Yeah, he's definitely getting the spectators and athletes to enjoy that finish line stretch, and it's very well deserved by the end of 26.2 miles.
Well, we ran through the full list of the top 10 a little bit earlier, but there's confirmation for you. Headed home by Mande Busanic of Uganda, winning the 14th edition of this Generali Marathon Malaga in a course record of 2:06.07, more than 2 minutes in front of Mike Chematot in 2nd place, 2:08.12, and completing the top 3. Coming through strongly after going through a bad patch, Sarai Mazenge of Norway, 2:09.59. There's the full lineup there. And we go on further down the line. Well, Ivory Coast Jonathan Atse Herrera, just a little bit outside his own national record, the Swiss-based Ivorian. We've got Swedes, Mohamed Alden. Now, I don't think he's going to be too happy with that, a 2:25 race. That wasn't what he came here expecting and hoping for. But some good performances as well. Some of the top Spaniards, Poles in there in the top 30. And just outside of the top 30, a couple of Britons, Reece Brown and Joseph Crutchley. We've still got the leading women coming home. And the men now, well, the clock's at 2:37, 2 hours 37. So some of the Spanish club runners, men will be turning out for their club over the cross-country season in the coming months. And of course, fine tradition of road running and cross-country here.
Well, there you go on the screen then, your top 5 of the women's elite race. Alamayehu, with that incredible, surprising course record, took us all by surprise in the final sort of 7K or so. McComan coming home for a small PB, and Tariku an even smaller one, but a fantastic effort from both of those to round off the top 3. And of course, Christina Hendel came in, the German, in 5th after her late entry. It was a superb women's race in a way that we couldn't have predicted. And I think the conditions really did lend themselves to it. I think we've been very lucky in Malaga today, especially after the forecast and the conditions that we had last night. The athletes were certainly getting a little bit nervous.
So we hope you enjoyed our morning's coverage of the 14th edition of the Generali Marathon. Here are the highlights. Here are the best of the last 2 hours 40 minutes. It's time for myself, Phil Minchell, and alongside me, Rosie Tinbergen, to say good morning.